Latin America is a rising power in terms of technology. Brazil, in particular, is now in a very strong position. And even what you would call medium economies are important. Last week, I was invited down to London to meet and attend a seminar with the President of Colombia. Why did the President of Colombia want to meet people like me? It's because he had decided that research and innovation should be at the center of his economic strategy, and he's introduced an extremely radical measure. He's changed the constitution of his country to say that 10% of all mining revenues should go on research and innovation. So suddenly they have money to spend and they want to come forward very, very quickly. Other actions here are trying to free up risk finance with the cooperation of the European Investment Bank and to target small and medium-sized enterprises. The third element of all of this is perhaps the most interesting and one which I've been personally involved in trying to push this agenda, and that is the idea that we don't have a research and innovation program for its own sake. We have one that's there to answer societal challenges. Societal challenges are challenges which are so large they cannot be dealt with by single organizations, and very rarely can they be dealt with by single governments. They are at a minimum European, and in most cases they are truly global. This list I've put here is the list which is in the draft text for the program, and I think it would be familiar and uncontroversial. Health, demographic change, food security, energy, integrated transport, everything around climate action and resource efficiency, and then one led by the social sciences and reflecting what we were hearing earlier about inclusion, the idea that we should try to generate inclusive, innovative, and secure societies. Every word counts there, because you can take one key word and turn it into hundreds of millions of expenditure. Secure societies, that means we're likely to have an action on security, for example. These challenges, as I mentioned, tend to transcend the organizational and governance capabilities we currently have, and therefore they present us with a real coordination problem. How do we get beyond the kind of bottom-up innovation which is going on in all of those things and turn it into a systemic approach? Transport, energy, health and defense are all activities which are dominated by government, either as a direct actor or at a minimum as a regulator. They're also a particular European strength. We have much more sophisticated systems in these than most parts of the world, and we could, if we wished, coordinate demand and use it as a major stimulus to innovation. Markets themselves are powerful coordinating instruments, but they tend in public goods to move away from the direction of innovation unless they're structured by the actions of governments. This has been very clear, for example, in the deregulation of the energy sector, where deregulated energy companies hugely reduced their investments in research and innovation and have required a re-regulation to try and force them back into doing it. So there is a need to mobilize this demand side and to try to make Europe a lead market for these societal goods, which we could then export to other parts of the world. The other reason societal challenges or grand challenges are important is that they provide a real connection between the rather obscure and arcane activities that researchers get up to and the concerns of citizens. It's much easier to explain to a citizen that we are working on health or transport problems than to explain to them that we are working on nanotechnology or on biotechnology. Coming back then to think a little bit about what this means for small countries. Clearly, small countries, like everyone else, need an excellent science base. There's not much room in science for anyone who isn't excellent. But if we do have an elite funding mechanism, it does risk exclusion. It becomes effectively rather random in where these go. So the European Research Council has given one advanced research grant to Cyprus, which has immediately moved right up the tables on a per capita basis to be something like number 10. Malta hasn't had one, so you're not in the table at all. The move to elite funding is not only European. We're seeing it in national administrations as well. It's a very strong trend in the UK. Organisations like the Wellcome Trust and others are giving bigger and longer grants to fewer people. And we haven't really properly assessed the effect on the health of research in doing this. But anyway, let me move on. Because you have this built-in problem of thinly spread expertise, it does create vulnerability, and there's a need to offset such risks through partnerships. Now, the key technologies are critical, but they're very difficult for a small country to cover, certainly to cover them all. And it may really be a challenge of maximizing the capacity of your economy to quickly absorb and use these technologies rather than to be at the leading edge in generating most of them. That doesn't mean you stop doing research in them, but it does affect the kind of choices you make in that research. Much more focused on building up expertise and training people at an advanced level. We mustn't also neglect innovation in services which often dominate small economies. It is as possible to apply innovative ideas and indeed innovative technologies in sectors like tourism as it is in sectors that we would normally class as high-tech. Finally, the societal challenges are of clear relevance. I don't think any of those would not be relevant to any country in the Union. But how we unfold those, how we define the specifics, does need to be argued through. For example, the action you might take on climate change and water would probably be different. I mean, is there an initiative to deliver small-scale economic desalination systems, for example? Is there an initiative which deals with particular kinds of adapted crops, dealing with increased salinity in groundwater? These are the kind of issues which have to be pushed and which are quite difficult for small and overstretched administrations in small countries sometimes to get across in these large fora. So, coming to a conclusion, from the beginning I was trying to argue to you that there's a tension between the severe fiscal constraints that we face and the need for investment in research and innovation. It's clear that not only are there multiple policy instruments, but that we need multiple policy instruments to foster these key flows in the knowledge ecology. I'm a great believer in packaging what we do under the rubric of societal grand challenges, because they do allow us to mobilize resources for research and innovation, but we mustn't see these as only a license for doing particular kinds of science and research, but remember they are part of the wider EU 2020 agenda, and therefore make sure that we pay just as much attention to the demand side, to industrial markets and to social markets. So just as a parting message, it's an uncomfortable one that we have to deliver to politicians, but it's one that they have to absorb. Research and innovation are not a quick fix for the economic crisis, but along with entrepreneurship, private entrepreneurship and social entrepreneurship, research and innovation are unfortunately the only fix. Thank you.